Seated to my right is Mr. Camp, next to him is Mr. Hudson. This is a request for LERTA consideration for an industrial park which is located between Bordnersville Road and Fisher Road, just south of Route 72, between 72 and 81. Dennis has been very familiar with this for the last 5 years, 4 years, 3 years. Mr. Camp has been working with Dennis and Union Township in regard to site improvements, including a sewer system which has been curbed, roads, water, and things of that nature.
Back here, we've been working with Union Township for about 5 years. We relocated wetlands, the Army Corps, we got all our permits and approvals about 1.5 years ago. And last year, we spent the summer building a road. So we have approvals for a 1 million square foot warehouse, a 500,000 square foot warehouse. They sit on lot number 2. And on lot number 1, we have a 300,000 square foot warehouse. Those approvals are fully approved from the township and all the governing authorities. So we only would need a building permit at this point in time. Okay. We've further done the site improvements for the main artery of the road. One of the things that truckers like, and it's better for all of the residents in the area, is to have these kinds of facilities that everybody needs but nobody wants very close to an interchange. So rather than a mile back a road or 2 miles back a road where trucks would be not really loved by residents, we built a spine road here that actually is a Lickdale bypass road from Interstate 78 and Route 72 all the way through and connecting down to the Love's truck stop at Fisher Avenue. So when the trucks leave, they can, hit the interchange immediately. Also, this road was important for Union Township to alleviate some traffic congestion they had presently without this development in the township at the Lickdale Village. That road is now in. We built it last year. We further have, and then we sold, Vision sold to the Panatone Company, this lot 2. For the 1 million and the 500 is now controlled by Dan's company, the Panatone Company. And the 360 is controlled by our company still, or Vision. So at this point in time, we pad readied the 1 million and the 500, all the site work, and there was about 900,000 cubic yards of dirt were moved, and those pads are now ready for a tenant. So we did not pad ready the 360 at this point in time. The sewer plant, the sewer pumping station, and the sewer lines are all in place and built. We are turning the sewer plant over to the authority in the next month or 2, I would think. The road has been turned over to the township. It's now a township road. The water lines have been stubbed into the property from the authority. The electric has been brought into the property from PP&L. So we have spent considerable amount of money to get this site ready for development. So we feel it's ready for development with just a building permit is all that's needed.
Are you starting with us, or have you been to the school district? Or
Let me tell you where I am. Obviously, we've talked to Dennis and sent them copies of the resolution. Okay. I have communicated with Northern Lebanon School District. I've received a letter back, which I will be happy to give to you. They suggested a few minor changes in the resolution, but indicated that in the letter that when I have those changes made, that quite frankly, they would be very receptive to the situation. So in that regard, we're here. Are we starting with you? Kind of yes, kind of no. We've been in communication with all of the 3 taxing bodies. And I think Dennis can bring you up to date on that as far as they're concerned.
And I know Susan had talked about being here from our Economic Development Corporation. She was not able to make it apparently?
No.
Or was she notified?
She was. I just saw an email from her that she had an appointment in Lancaster County at 1 o'clock. So
Okay.
looking for 10 years from all 3?
That's correct.
Yes.
We're looking for 10 years 10% each year. Mr. Hudson can explain, if you want further explanation, I think I've provided for you, but I think he can well explain the need for this in order to attract such a facility.
Yeah.
I think also you probably know, before Dan answers that the Berks County, they didn't have LERTA. And we started our site work, or we're getting ready to start our site work. They were starting their site work in Road, and they put LERTA in place down there. And those two tenants were looking at us and decided to go down there. So it's really needed. I mean, all those big tenants are all looking for the 10-year LERTA at this point in time.
Our goal, Panattoni Development Company's goal, is to obviously find a tenant, build the buildings, and own those buildings long-term. And when major corporations are comparing cost of occupancy across various choices that they have, they clearly look at rental rate and they clearly look at relative levels of other costs, operating costs, including taxes. And so these benefits that exist in various jurisdictions 100% inure to the benefit of the corporations, and they come into play as they're making decisions. We had provided in our little write-up kind of major transactions that have been done over the last roughly year, since 2012, and we've had a good flurry of activity. We, Panattoni, were actually involved in the large Unilever transaction that was 1,400,000 square feet, and obtaining, it was in Newville, Pennsylvania, and obtaining LERTA status at that site was paramount and to the choice of Unilever to ultimately select that site. There have been a number of transactions, many of which you all know about, the PetSmart deal, the Dollar General deal, Southwire down in the York area, all of which benefited, went to sites that had LERTA status in place. Since we wrote up our little write-up, there are two other deals pending where choices are being made. Walmart's looking at a site over in Bethlehem that has LERTA at this point in time, and Procter & Gamble is looking at a site down in the Shippensburg marketplace that would support a 1.7 million square foot facility, and they're in the process requesting LERTA now. Ironically, many of the sites that are vacant in the various communities are sites that do not have LERTA and are in various stages of applying for it like we are. So we believe that our competitive advantage will improve greatly with LERTA. That is a benefit that's passed on 100% to the tax-paying body, which is the tenant, because we would be building a building with a tenant in tow, not in advance of the tenant.
I have certain questions.
Certainly, with the pulling of a building permit and an initiation of the building, the base case before improvements would roughly double the taxes, and then on a 10-year, 10% per year stepped basis, the taxes with a LERTA in place would increase roughly $75,000 a year over that 10-year period. So in no event would taxes ever go down. They would roughly double from current status once we pulled a building permit, and then every year thereafter they would roughly go up by $75,000 a year over a 10-year period.
Okay.
Sure.
Question number one. To some degree, the land has been improved because you have all of the amenities there, the utilities, if you will. So that's
Correct.
it's site-ready,
Correct.
shovel-ready, I guess is the term.
That's
Has our assessment staff valued the land at this point? Or are you looking at pre-existing tax
they have reevaluated it,
to include the utilities?
to include current status, yes.
Because it was for big farms.
It
and
was
now it's-
assessed as improved by the infrastructure.
Okay, that was very important to me because it is improved at this point, and I could not go back.
Yes.
I would have to have it,
Nobody's there. This,
Yeah.
unfortunately, we're in the same domain that we usually are for asking for tax considerations.
Excuse me, George.
This
would you-
has
would you
nothing to do
introduce,
with that. Mr. Ames, good afternoon, sir.
Sorry, I'm late for class.
No, okay.
How are you?
Welcome.
Basically, what the competitive need for LERTA is in order to improve the property.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. I have an issue with the concept, but since everybody's doing it, we're defenseless, so.
Okay, not, I can
that's
argue
it.
the concept.
That was basically my message, yeah.
That's basically it. I mean, we were
Yeah.
going along, and then Berks County decided they'd do it, and and other people are doing it now. Elizabethtown, they're doing it down in Lancaster County, they're doing it down in Shippensburg, they're doing it down in other places, and so here we are.
I kind of traced the last 5 or 6 transactions throughout that 81 corridor, and I don't think there's a big deal that's been done at the site that did not have LERTA.
Commissioner Litz was, she has a list of questions she was just gonna go through.
Well, my philosophy of life has been a piece of the pie is better than no pie at all, so I still function in this role in that same thinking, that same mindset, so.
Yeah, and the other thing that's important to remember is none of that savings or tax savings or deferment is going to the development team at all. It all goes right to the tenant for less occupancy costs. It's not a profit center at all for the developer.
Well, it's one of those situations where we all have something to gain.
Right.
That's right. Yeah, and I was just summarizing that in the absence of doing nothing, taxes are running along at around $30,000 a year. We estimate that when we go to pull a building permit, they'll roughly double, just because of the status of going towards an improved parcel at that time. And then, under a LERTA, they would ramp, with our assumptions that we provided, they'd ramp up at about $75,000 a year, each year, over a 10-year period.
And
So Joanne,
Sorry for the interruption.
Yeah.
I guess it's important for me to convey that I don't want anything to appear to be rubber stamped, so I always do due diligence and ask sometimes some tough questions. And my question to you was whether or not the utilities have been included in the existing appraisal or assessment of the property, and the answer was yes. Is that correct?
I don't know, we didn't do the
To the best
assessment.
of our
To the
No,
best
no,
of-
I do know that's the case, because we had confusion over whether we had 2 tax parcels or a single tax parcel for the Lot 1 site. And
Lot
I've
2
had,
site.
Lot 2 site, excuse me, I've had numerous conversations with Dan Siemens, and we got our tax questions resolved, but that was in response to their reassessment efforts. So the rate at which we're paying today is the fully assessed, zoned industrial, improved industrial ground rate, as I understand it.
And to make sure that there's absolutely no problems, you don't mind if I trust but verify?
Oh, no, not at all,
Okay.
not at all.
I mean, because in
Yeah.
other words, with the utilities is what I'm looking at with the assessment.
Yeah,
Because anything that's already done, we can't go back. That's my theory.
right.
Number 2, I would like a copy of the school letter to see what has changed in perhaps anything that we would adopt here today so that we can be consistent.
Well, the school has requested, and I have put it in this resolution, that the school has requested that instead of going from the amount exempted, 100, 90, 90, they did it the opposite way, and page 2 says that the percentage is 0 the first year, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, all the way up. They reversed it, okay? When I put it in the proposal, I said the amount exempted in year 1 would be 100%, then 90, 80, and all the way down. So it reduced the exemption. The school wanted it stated the other way. The amount taxable the first year would be 0, and then it would go up. That is the only change that I've made, and I've included it in the proposal which I have here.
Okay.
Okay.
And you've provided then a copy of the letter and the proposal to Jamie?
No, that sounds like the one we have from early October.
Yeah,
was-
this
was
is the new
prior to
one.
that,
This is
yeah.
the new one, and I've changed another page to it.
Okay.
When they say letter, I
Didn't you say you got a letter from the school district? Did I
Yes.
misunderstand? Okay.
I did not include that, but I'll be happy to give him a
Okay.
copy today.
Just to make sure there's nothing else that we need to incorporate it
No,
into.
that's fine.
Okay. And then my final question is, I'm a little confused. How many jobs do you predict that this site will create for the area?
That is included in this information, but we were always the 1,200 to 1,500 jobs.
I guess without having
It
tenants, you
depends.
can't,
It depends, that's correct.
Yeah.
It varies.
Give us
Because
any
if you have
wages.
a fulfillment center that's case by case, where they're stacking a trailer truck with all of one product, there seems to be less jobs. If a lot of what we see now is the internet pick and pack operations, where they're picking, you know,
like
one
a
item,
quill or
another
something,
item,
yeah.
and there's a lot more labor intensive there, so that would be on the higher end.
Okay.
So it's hard to tell.
That level that Jeff just described, the typical user that we see in the marketplace today is Amazon. And if you look at the Amazon facilities that are roughly 1 million square feet, they're about 1,200 jobs per 1 million square foot building. There was one just announced recently in Baltimore. It was on the front of the Baltimore Sun today, I think, and they touted 1,200 jobs. We obviously have twice as much square footage. We could have twice as many jobs if we had that kind of users. It's unlikely that we would have Amazon at this locale, but many of the tenants that we've seen or talked to have been in that e-fulfillment realm, and everybody has been thinking that there's a need for between 300 and 700 jobs, car parking spaces. That's where it relates to our planning efforts, is the amount of car parking spaces we build into our plan per building. So that kind of supports another way to get back to almost the same total.
So we're being a little
1,000.
conservative, maybe, maybe not.
So then probably they'll be operating around the clock the way it sounds, because you couldn't park all those cars.
Usually they're 2 shifts,
Yeah,
Two shifts.
Typically 2 shifts.
typically 2 shifts, not typically 3.
And I'm just curious then, is there going to be another red light, or does it come out at the same red light?
No, it'll come out at the red light at the Loves,
Okay.
okay? And then we have put money in an escrow account with a local bank here, in case there's a red light needed at Bordnersville Road in 72.
Okay,
That the township engineer, if he needs that light, and I forget exactly how it's worded, but it's there, and it's there for 10 years,
okay.
okay?
All right, I guess that's my questions. Thank you for,
Thank you for
Yeah.
listening, I appreciate it.
There's another developer who came in recently asking for a LERTA up the road in Bethel Township, I believe. And it sounded like a very similar project to this, if I recall. Are you familiar with that one?
No.
Okay.
US Real Estate
US Real Estate.
and Trammell Crow.
Oh, Trammell Crow,
Oh,
that site, I am
USA.
familiar with that site, USA.
It sounds like
Yeah.
you're well ahead of them in terms of.
We're
being
shovel
able-
ready
being
and
able to
ready to
market.
go, as
Yeah,
Joanne said,
okay.
yeah, we're
I
pretty
think
far
Bethel
ahead of them.
turned that down as well. Bethel Township,
Did they?
I think, turned that down.
Did they?
and you already have your EDUs and all that.
We
so
have EDUs on
that-
reserve,
the
we have
others
everything.
didn't. That was a big question I had
Yeah,
for them,
yeah,
because
our
where's the water
EDUs,
gonna come from?
We pay a reserve fee every month for the EDUs.
I understand that you can't tell me who you might be negotiating with, but optimistically, what kind of timetable are you on for getting a tenant in there? Projecting
We
any?
have negotiated over the past year with numerous tenants who have looked at our property. There's not a tenant today that we're negotiating with that precipitated this meeting. What we're really trying to do is be more competitive in the marketplace, so we don't lose those tenants
The next tenant.
the next one through.
And I've asked this question before when LERTAs have come up. So the clock really starts ticking when you're finished construction and they're moved in. That's when the benefits will start.
That's correct.
That's our understanding.
And you have how many years to make that happen under this agreement?
2-year period
The
with a
2 year.
1-year extension.
To get the building out, yeah.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
And we would envision that we would have a tenant inside of that 2-year window.